Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. With just a week left until Election Day, I'm very excited for tonight's timely conversation. Our student athletes have been working really hard on on campus to get everyone registered. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about how their efforts have come about and how they're succeeding in that. And then Morgan is also working very hard in the broader community. So we're very excited to bring this conversation between alumni and our student athletes. So without further ado, I'm going to briefly introduce our speakers and then let them start talking about voting. First, please welcome our two student athletes, Matt Thomas, senior on the baseball team, co-president of SAC, and Gabby Donaldson, sophomore on the women's basketball team. And Morgan Brown, Harvard baseball alum, from the class of 2006, who is currently working on the New Hampshire Democratic Campaign. So Morgan, I will pass it off to you.
Jess, thank you very much. And thank you to the Harvard Varsity Club for everything that you do for us as student athletes while we're at Harvard and for the broader community of student athletes who are now alums. I know I can speak for myself and on behalf of everybody by saying how proud we are of Gabby and Matt for all the work that they've done on campus. I'd like to get right into that. So the Harvard Votes Challenge. You've been extraordinarily successful during a time when a lot of us are figuring out how to operate new ways of doing things during the pandemic. 41 teams with 100% voter registration. How did you pull that off? Gabby, I'll start with you.
Well, I definitely say that with under the leadership of Matt and many of the other people who led this initiative, I definitely believe that this is one of the times when everyone just really was really invested. And it's a great feeling to know that we're kind of embodying that more than an athlete mantra that we all, support. So I think it's definitely a great thing. It shows us that, we have other duties outside of being student athletes, and this is one that's very important. So we're really excited about it.
And Matt, can you talk a little bit about SAC and your role as co-president and how SAC participates with the Harvard Votes Challenge?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Morgan. So back, I think in May or June, the Harvard Votes Challenge reached out to us saying, hey, we are planning on trying to get 100% voter engagement for all students on campus. And we would love to work with SAC and all of the sports teams to try and get teams to register kind of with their teammates. And we thought it was a great idea. We were really looking for ways, knowing that there's the potential for a virtual semester, to try and engage a student body and really kind of like go beyond just being athletes and using our platform maybe to be responsible, engaged citizens and try and be leaders in the community. And so we were on board and they've been really great in helping us. We've brainstormed together ways to try and engage people on each team and try and make sure everyone gets educated and knows what resources they have. And so what we've had is we've ended up having a point person on each team who's been responsible and really doing a lot of the legwork in getting their teammates to sign up. So Gabby, for example, has been the women's basketball rep and has been a superstar. Just reaching out to her teammates, making sure that everyone knows all of the registration deadlines for their own home states and making sure that everyone has been signed up and ready to go. And because people like Gabby have really been so passionate on each and every team, and really taken on all this responsibility, it's been even more successful than we could have imagined.
That's amazing. We should get some of your organizing tactics and spread them out in the real world. I know we've got a lot of alumni watching this that are probably going to want to hire you immediately after we get off here. I'm thinking about this and tying the mission to Harvard's mission, which is for creating citizen leaders for our society. Matt, I know you're a captain. Gabby, you've taken a prominent role in getting this started. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned about leadership through this effort?
Yeah, I'll definitely speak on that. So one thing that I've learned about leadership that I've always believed is that leadership is service. And this is a time when all of us have gotten a chance to serve our teams in a different way other than getting assists or getting rebounds or what have you. And it's a very humbling experience. It's exciting. If you love to lead, you have to love to serve. And just getting everyone involved and being supportive and being a leader in a different way has been an exceptional experience. So I definitely say that it's definitely hard work, but it always pays off. You see the numbers speak for themselves. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and to echo what Gabby said, one thing that it's been really more clear than ever for me is just how in leadership you never accomplish anything alone. So in doing this, just all of it sounds cliche almost coming from an athlete, but like the amazing teamwork that's been going on. So it's sometimes my job, it feels like, is even easier than people like Gabby, where they're the ones really like keep bugging their teammates over and over and over to follow through and make sure they get it done. And whereas like we're just trying to coordinate and make sure we have a spreadsheet keeping track of each team. And so if we try to reach out to each team just on SAC ourselves, we wouldn't have nearly the amount of success that everyone else who's been really kind of use those personal relationships with their teammates to help make sure and walk them through the process. So just making sure that we never try to go about anything alone and realizing how much help you have along the way.
Gabby, I think this is your first time voting. Matt, I think you voted once before. Can you talk about what that feeling is like? I know there's obviously a lot of changes when you go off to college, but it also does mean that during the 4 years in college will often be the first time somebody votes in a presidential election. Can you talk a little bit more about what that feeling means to you? And I believe you may have already voted. Can you talk about that experience?
Yes, I am an early North Carolina voter, and I'm so proud of that. I can't really describe the feeling. It's so exciting for a time in your life to come when your voice, you can actually speak and, you see the results, and just knowing that, it's a time where you really feel like you are as equal to other people around you. And for me, it was especially important because my parents grew up in the heart of the civil rights movement, and just to have the opportunity to vote without legal barriers, even though there are some efforts, that would try to do things otherwise. But I have a 97-year-old grandfather, and he didn't get to vote until his adulthood, and he might be watching right now. So, hey, Grandpa. But it's just definitely it's definitely a very heartwarming experience just to know that I have a voice and it matters and it counts. And I don't only vote for myself, I vote for my kids, my grandkids, for all my brothers and sisters across the United States whose voices have been suppressed in various ways. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and for me, it's something. It's really cool to see. One thing, my mom and dad, who I think are both watching right now, hi mom and dad, they tried to instill in me growing up was a sense of empowerment and a sense of that I can, if there's something in my community that I'm not satisfied with, that we have the power to change it. And voting is just like the most concrete example of that I've seen, and saying that we get to determine who represents us. We get to determine who makes the rules. In some cases, on the California ballot, there are 100 propositions that we get to determine the rules ourselves. And it's really, really neat and almost a humbling experience to be able to fill out that ballot and see that you get to make the choice yourself. And it's a reminder of how important it is to be educated and how important it is to make these choices responsibly. And also just realizing that you don't have to be a product of your circumstances. If you're not satisfied with them, you have the power to change them. And so just knowing that going forward, that you're only limited by the amount of effort you're willing to put in.
Now that you've both been so successful on helping all these teams register and all the people on the team register, have you taken this verve for organizing and getting people registered to vote outside of Harvard athletics to your family or your friends? And do you have any recommendations for the rest of us if we're trying to get more people excited and interested in voting?
Yeah, for me personally, just letting people know where I voted. I was actually blessed enough to vote without any lines. So just spreading that news and just kind of keeping a bug in people's ear about how important this election is. Of course, there are very passionate voters, and there are some people who aren't as excited, aren't as hopeful, and just keeping the energy high and letting them know that this is one of those once in a lifetime elections where democracy is really on the line here, and just having people involved no matter what side of whatever party they're affiliated with, or if they're even affiliated at all, just letting them know that their voice actually matters no matter what they want to speak about. So
Yeah, for me, I guess the organizing bug I've caught a little bit this election cycle. My mom worked in politics and ran campaigns for 2 decades, so I guess I got it from her. But yeah, I've worked for the Biden campaign since May, and so it's been doing remote work on a campaign this time has been just phone call after phone call after phone call, and 90% of the time they don't even pick up. And when they do pick up, oftentimes they don't want to talk to me. But just I think the power of persistence and just reaching out to everyone you can, and really just never being letting your enthusiasm wane at all or being discouraged. And then also just how far it can go if you just text someone you know, and just to check in and make sure they have a plan for voting, or they know where they're going to vote or how they're going to vote, because in this election voting has been more unsure and than ever before. So just that personal ask of it, like checking in on friends, really goes a really long way.
Matt, we heard about Gabby's experience voting. Have you voted, or do you have a plan to vote, and what is it?
Yeah, I actually just turned in I mailed my ballot home to California yesterday. I was very excited to do so. I took a selfie. I had my I voted sticker on all my Zooms yesterday. I took a video. I sent it to everyone I knew. And I was, yeah, my parents mailed me my ballot, and then I was just able to mail it right back. So
During this time, so you both successfully voted. Well done. So you're living up to your part of the Harvard Votes Challenge. How are you checking in as a team? You got everyone registered. Now the next step is to make sure that everybody votes. How is that process going? And any stories from what has happened so far with a week to go?
yeah. So what I could just say is Chris Aggie, who's a basketball alum from the men's team from I think 2018, has really gotten involved in different social activism causes this summer, and he, being a Harvard alum, has set up a couple workshops this week for saying, like, now I've registered, or now I've mailed my ballot, what's next? And so I think the next one is scheduled for Thursday, where as many athletes as we can, we're trying to get onto a Zoom call just to get together, and it'll be a text bank, whether it's like texting your teammates to make sure they voted, or following up with friends and family to make sure they voted. And then SAC is trying to coordinate an effort to touch base with each of the point people on teams like Gabby, to make sure that they now, instead of just saying like, hey, have you registered? If they say, hey, what's your plan to vote?
That's awesome. Well done. I'm taking notes for myself here on the side too. We talk a lot about athletes as leaders at Harvard. Certainly, I think this year a lot of Americans have seen professional athletes as leaders as well, talking about civic issues. Can you talk a little bit about how you see your role as an athlete, and your role as a leader, and your role as a member of society, sort of working together, and if you've taken anything from the leadership role that professional athletes have played?
Yeah, I'll speak on that. So I have been inspired tremendously by seeing professional athletes across all sports, really participating and speaking up about what's going on in the country and even around the world at that. And I think that it shows that one beautiful thing I can say that a lot of athletes pride themselves on is work ethic and drive, and just being able to channel that in different ways in order to enact that change that we so desperately need. It's very inspiring, and I believe that we are setting an example for the generations to come, to let them know that, you know, you're not just a number on a roster, but you are a human being. Your voice matters, and your platform, you can do so much. There's so many. I know as a kid, I used to look up to college athletes so much, and just to know that if one person can feel empowered to make the changes that we're working so hard to make, that matters so much. So just seeing that all come together is very inspiring.
Yeah, and for me, looking up to, I've always admired professional athletes, and now this summer they've given me even more reason to do so. I think being from LA, now LeBron is on the Lakers, so just seeing all that he's done, he started, I think, a voter registration nonprofit more than a vote, just trying to be a huge voter registration and vote, get out the vote drive, which has been really cool to see him use his platform that way. Or the NBA players, when I think in the middle of the playoffs, they all decided to go on strike for 2 or 3 days because they weren't satisfied with the measures the owners were taking to combat racial injustice in their communities. And they said they would only play if they had concrete solutions that were established. And it was really neat to see how they would risk kind of like their salaries or risk their risk sometimes in like a decision that might not have been popular with all of the fans to see for a change that they wanted to see in their community. And it's been cool to be inspired by even other teams. So one thing we did with SAC was trying to compile all of the different social justice initiatives teams took this summer in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And every team, just about every single team, either released a statement, started a fundraiser, talked about or made a commitment to have a voter registration drive, and or in some cases like talked about community service they would do in the local Boston community. And I think that's part of what has made this voter registration initiative so successful is teams have made a promise back in May, back in June about how they would be more civically engaged and more responsible and use their platform to affect change in good ways in their community. And they've all now followed through. So it's been cool just to kind of ride that enthusiasm and momentum that they set out and now have kept up ever since June.
I'd love to talk more about that and come back to something that Gabby said earlier, which was if you love to lead, you have to love to serve. And I can tell from the enthusiasm that you both have, and clearly from the enthusiasm that you've generated amongst Harvard student athletes, that this interest in civic engagement and having a voice is not going to end next Tuesday. It's not the end point. So can you talk about how you keep this enthusiasm going? Is this going to, you feel like people are motivated and engaged to do this sort of every day of their lives, or you think this is really people are focused on November 3rd, or is this a longer term, measure of activity?
I definitely think that this is certainly a movement, not a moment. And I think that people are really realize the power of using your voice. And once you realize that power, you take it and you run with it and you keep on going until you see what you want. And I feel like that motivation is purely based on, it's bigger than you. And when you realize that you're dedicating yourself to something that's bigger than you, you're doing it for family, like my shirt says. You're not just doing it for yourself to make yourself feel good, but there are people out there who are hurting. There are people who are dying, and to know that when you speak up, you can affect someone's life and even generations to come. I definitely believe there's some fire up under this movement, and it's going to take a lot to put it out.
So well said, Gabby. Yeah, for me, I feel the exact same. In seeing that, I think this summer we all matured a little bit, and seeing that not only was it enough just to make sure that we were responsible and civically engaged individuals, but making sure that realizing kind of like the privileges that came with being a Harvard student athletes and the platforms we were afforded, that it was not only our responsibility, but our obligation to use it to lift others up and to try and, whether it's help those in our community around in the greater Boston area or in our communities back at home. And I think that sense of maturity, that sense of responsibility, that sense of obligation is something that I think will last through November 3rd and hopefully continue beyond.
We wanted to hear a little bit more about that as well. We talk about the challenges of doing any sort of organizing virtually and the stress that our communities, both very close to us and in the broader sense, are feeling stressed right now. Have you felt that this has helped build further community on your teams and between and across teams to foster an overall athletics community?
Definitely. Yeah, I have a joke with one of the other student athletes who's running helping with Harvard Votes challenges. Her name's Gabby Donaldson on the women's rugby team, and we text so much that we joke we're now best friends. But yeah, I think it's just seeing that we've had different Zooms and video calls, and we've had guest speakers come in. We've partnered with the Women of Harvard Athletics to have different calls, and in all these different events we've had and different conversations, I think it's kind of realized people kind of like bridge gaps across teams and see people a little bit more for their humanity, and kind of like get to know their background and more than just the sport they play, and kind of realize some of the struggles they may be having and struggles they may share or struggles they may have that's different from their own experience. And in doing that, I think it's brought us all a little bit closer and helped us all become a little bit more empathetic.
I know for both of you, you've mentioned a prior pre-existing interest in either in political engagement or civic engagement. How has this activity impacted what you're thinking about doing with your own futures after Harvard?
I'd say for me personally, it's given me a lot of motivation. Just having the opportunity to serve in this way, just it gave me more passion and deepened my empathy and just gave me a totally different perspective that, the change you want to see is not that far off when you put in the work to achieve that change, to get that change. So I definitely am even 10 times more enthusiastic. And a lot of people know I'm an enthusiastic woman, but I'm fired up. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think for me, it just being a senior and now having to kind of reckon with what I want to do after graduation, it's just become more clear than ever that I don't think I can justify doing any career that has a purpose that other than making other people's lives better. So whether that's ones I thought about are education or going to law or politics, I think that I have to use and recognize the privilege and the platform that I've been given and gotten here from being at Harvard and use that to pay it forward to make sure others have the same kind of transformative, fantastic opportunities that I've had that they might not have been lucky enough to have. And so I don't think I'll ever. It's made it more clear and just distilled it to the fact that I I have been given so much and I need to give it back. So I think that's what it's been for me.
As our time starts to wind down, I want to be mindful that we've got a lot of alumni on the line who always like hearing stories about current student athletes. And we all remember back to the wonderful days we spent at Harvard and with Harvard Athletics. I wondered if each of you might have one story that you could share with the alumni about what you've been doing with your teams during COVID, about the last season that you were able to play, or just a story you can share with us so that we can remember some of those wonderful days that are so warm in our memories.
Matt, I'll let you go. I'm trying to think of a good one to tell.
So a story about being with our team.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, one story that stands out is, so our last complete season was 2 years ago. Last season we were spring sport, so we got cut short. Our team ended, we had not won an Ivy League championship since, I think you were on the team, Morgan. I think it had been 14 years.
Long time ago.
No, so I mean, yeah, you might be confused. You might think that was so recently, but no. But yeah, I think it'd been 14 or 15 years. And the year before, we thought we had a chance, and then on the final weekend came up a little bit short. But this time we ended up pulling through, and I was lucky enough to be catching and be the one on the field at the time when we ended up winning. And the final out, I ran up and bear hugged my pitcher, and then sure enough, we got toppled over into a dog pile, and I made the decision to take my mask off, which in hindsight didn't work out so well because someone jumped on the dog pile and just I got cleated right on the nose, but I couldn't even feel it. I was unfazed. We were on cloud nine. And then that night, I just remember we all got together and we're hanging out as a team, and someone put on "We Are the Champions" by Queen. And I know it's cliche, but it was like a kumbaya, big hug circle, and we were just screaming as loud as we could, and we had a blast.
And my story is a little bit similar. So last year, one of the most memorable moments was when we beat Cal Berkeley the second year in a row. And the way that we rallied around each other and encouraged each other, supported each other. I lost my voice. It was just an incredible experience just to see all of us just come together and see all of our hard work pay off and share a big group hug at the end, lots of screaming, and just those moments is something you cherish for a lifetime. I feel like it was just yesterday, and I look forward to so many more memories with my team like that.
That's awesome. And we, as the alumni community, tremendously enjoy watching you and your teams compete. So thank you for giving us that joy, and thanks for sharing those stories. As we're wrapping up, I also want to say again just how incredibly proud I am and how incredibly proud we are of the work that you and all the current student athletes have done to take a proactive role in our democracy and in this moment. And I hope that you do continue with the same enthusiasm for a very long time, and we're grateful for that. Just in closing, I'll open it up to both of you if there's anything else that you'd like to share either about your feelings on what what we've been talking about tonight, or if any other amusing stories, because those always go a long way, pop into your head.
Well, first, I would like to say thank you to the Varsity Club. You guys are amazing, all the alums supporting us, and our friends and family and peers who came out. Thank you guys for this. And if you don't take anything away from this, please, please, please vote. People's lives depend on this, and your voice matters. Know that your voice matters, and we're really excited for this time, so thanks.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add on to that super important message from Gabby is the people we work with at the Harvard Votes Challenge talked about how athletes far and away have been the most successful group they've had in getting registered to vote. So it just, we've almost had 100% of people register to vote, whereas other groups are lagging a little further behind. But I think it just speaks to the culture and the lessons you learn of accountability and responsibility of being an athlete. And I just take pride in that, to everyone who's listening. Like, I know Gabby and I, we both do, and being Harvard student athletes and seeing that we are a really great group of people who have a really good sense of bigger purposes in mind and kind of remember our positionality and use that for good. So I just want to remind everybody to be proud, because we really are.
Yeah.
Matt and Gabby, thank you very much. Thank you for the work that you've done, and thanks for spending the time with us here tonight. We really, really appreciate it. Great job, and keep up the good work. And everybody go vote.
Thanks.
Thanks, Morgan.